right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. My name is Baylor Rice. I'm one of the pharmacists and owner here at South River Compounding Pharmacy. So I'd like to welcome everybody this afternoon to our webinar on Into the Eye of the Cytokine Storm. So today we're really going to be talking about the inflammation and inflammatory process as a result of being exposed to the COVID virus and or having the COVID virus. So I did pop a poll in there for everybody. So as we're getting started, if you want to answer those questions, I'm going to leave that up for about another 8 minutes. So it'll be interesting to see those questions and answers on that. There is a chat feature. Everybody is muted and hopefully will stay muted as we are recording our webinars. So for those that aren't able to attend, that gives them the ability to watch these at a later date. So if you do have a question, please type that into the chat feature. I will be monitoring that as we're going along. I'll try to answer those, and certainly if we get bogged down into too many questions, then we'll move forward from there. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started this afternoon. So certainly disclaimer, I'll let you guys read that. Certainly the FDA doesn't review any slides or anything that we say or do here today. So with that, for the new folks that are on for us, I always like to take just a moment and welcome you and thank you for coming and joining us today. I'd like to give a little bit of an overview on South River so you'll understand really kind of where we come at, where we are and what we do and how we think a little bit differently. So we are a compounding only pharmacy. So that's the old-timey mixing and making from scratch. So the definition of compounding is the mixing or making of 2 or more ingredients to form a final product. So it's taking that old art of compounding and how pharmacy got started with the technology of today. We did start back in 1998, my wife and I opened up South River. I was working in a couple of my dad's stores and really kind of saw that we were Band-Aid medicine in the US. So really treating this symptom with this drug for that side effect of the first drug, and really kind of looked in how can we do things a little bit differently. So really got heavy into compounding and also opened my eyes into natural medicine and vitamins, minerals, herbals, homeopathic. So what can we do to keep you healthy? What can we do to stay healthy and really optimize the aging process for all of us? So we do offer individualized personal consultations here at South River, are trained in functional medicine, integrative therapy. So very much your East meets West. And at our disposal, we have a whole host of different testing that's available, from saliva and urine, hair analysis, stool analysis, neurotransmitter testing, micronutrient testing. And we will be having a webinar coming up in the future just talking about all the different tests that we have available, because every day people come in and say, hey, I didn't know we had this available. So really, what can we look at? How can we look at things a little bit deeper? So if you're having an issue that's unresolved, we've got tools and tips and tricks to help you. So with that, let's go ahead and start with today's presentation. And a lot of times I'll give this kind of at the end, but I'll start with this. So because in dealing with the cytokine storm and the inflammatory process, so much of what we use here is natural medicine and supplements. I figured I'd start today with the quality aspect. So when I'm discussing supplements, I am talking about quality. So I spend a lot of my time and energies invested into researching who we deal with, who we use for making our house brand, if you will, private labeled products. Because I use about 6 different manufacturers depending on who makes the best of what we're going after. So it is very important to me, being a pharmacist, very critical of processing, very critical of what they call standard operating procedures. So our companies are GMP certified, they're registered with the FDA, doing third-party analysis, looking at things like dissolution, disintegration, mass spectroscopy, and liquid chromatography. So at the end of the day, it is what it's supposed to be. It is what it's labeled. And that's very important, because if you're going to take a supplement, I want it to work. And we want to be able to evaluate it in a certain amount of time on, is it working? Is it not working? Do we need to adjust the dose, etc.? So everyday supplements. So I think it's always important to understand, what should I be taking as a baseline, right? And that's so very important. And on that aspect, whoops, didn't mean for that to go forward. Our Phytonutrient Multi is one of my main go-tos. It is a food-based multi. It has methylated bees in it, typically 1 to 2 a day. It is also in a capsule form. So if you do capsule form, it does take more capsules. Generally with that, it's 2 to 3 capsules, versus with the multi is tablet form, it's 1 to 2. Do take it with food. The bees in there, if you take bees on an empty stomach, it does have the propensity to upset the stomach. Fish oils, omega-3 essential fatty acids. So especially with inflammation, and I'm going to talk more about the multi in a moment, but I just kind of wanted to give an overview sketch of what's in a typical baseline protocol for the majority of my patients, like the foundation to building a house. You don't put the roof on until you have a solid foundation. Fish oils, omega-3 essential fatty acids, good for everything head to toe, and certainly have an anti-inflammatory component. So even more so when we're dealing with COVID. Vitamin D3, the data on helping with prevention for COVID is huge, as well as if you are exposed, contract the virus, it helps to decrease your symptomatology greatly. The data is amazing. So I typically, if I don't have a lab on you, then I'm going to recommend for adults 5,000 IUs as the baseline. If we have a lab, then I will go higher. As far as with LabCorp and Quest, which are 2 of the big labs on the East Coast, 30 to 100 is what they call normal. Ideal, though, really ideal is between 60 and 80, especially if you have chronic disease, autoimmune disease. I'm going to go up closer to that 80 mark. So, of course, besides the immune, also inflammation, but helping with bones. And then also CBD. And we'll have some more slides on CBD momentarily. CBD has been absolutely a game changer for my patients. Typically, most of my patients are somewhere between about 20 to 60 milligrams per day. I generally start at about 15 milligrams and titrate the dosage up until we hit the desired response. So with that being said, let me drop into a little bit more to really kind of highlight why the Phytonutrient Multi. Really, the antioxidant potential out of that is like that of 8 to 9 fresh fruits and veggies. Now, I'm not saying don't eat your fruits and veggies, but we all know the soil is not as nutrient dense as it was years ago, so it is depleted. So we're not getting the nutrition out of the food. And certainly with the obesity in America, it's hard to say, well, just eat more, eat more, eat more. But so many people, we need to really kind of be watching our intake with what we're pulling in. So loaded with antioxidants, really, and protecting the cellular DNA of our cells. So when we think about that and look at that, a deep thought for you is 65% of genetics is modifiable. So just because we may be encoded for a disease state doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get that disease. So we really want to protect what's inside of us and protect how our genes are expressing themselves. So the phytonutrient really is aimed at that and does an amazing job. So with that, certainly we can look at and think about how the antioxidant helps. And really, when we refer to the cytokine storm, that is that effect to the virus. It's the reaction to the virus, the inflammatory reaction, which increases the oxidative stress and causes free radical damage within our system. So helping to protect that oxidative damage to the cells is absolutely huge, and fortifying the body's reserve. So having the ability to handle something when it comes on. do a quick aside. The poll has finished. So one of you today so far did say that you've had, you or yourself have had COVID. We had 10 no answers. We had 3 saying no. And then no one is still experiencing symptoms of that. So thanks for filling that out. Just curious on those that were here today. So I'll clear that from my screen. So again, looking at the cells, so quite a bit of data has been done on the Phytonutrient Multi and looking at how it helps to protect the cell and when it's exposed to peroxides, which is going to as mimic, if you will, exposed to oxidative damage and stress. So the phytonutrient helps to keep that level higher than up here. So protecting your DNA. And again, 1 tablet is going to give ORAC values, kind of looking at the fresh fruits and veggies versus 2 is really going to pop that up there. As I mentioned, vitamin D, lots of data on that. I use an awful lot of the soft gels. And we also, as I said, baseline is 5,000. If I have a level, I'll pop it up and go up to 10,000. The data is pretty huge, even looking at influenza A, influenza B, autoimmune, etc. So vitamin D I use right down the board anyway, but especially with COVID, we want to be even more aware of it. CBD, so absolutely CBD kind of in the baseline as well. Why? Because the way that it impacts the endocannabinoid system. So within our endocannabinoid system, we have about 220 different receptors that we're hitting from head to toe, from the CB1 receptors, the CB2 receptors. So that is responsible for homeostasis of our respiratory system. So what gets impacted with this inflammatory process with COVID is our breathing, right? You see on TV, so many people having to be hospitalized, thrown into ICU, put on respirators. So anything we can do to help with that respiration, right? Also, as you can see, helps with the inflammatory process, helps with the immune process. The list goes on. But again, today being focused on COVID and the cytokine and inflammatory storm thereafter, just even focus at those top 2 right here, is so very critical. So that's, again, why CBD is the baseline. And then certainly if you get exposed and or having an issue, then we'll crank the dosage up even higher. Statement from the National Institutes of Health: modulating the endocannabinoid system may have therapeutic potential in almost all diseases affecting humans. Absolutely huge. And again, that's the one reason why CBD is really part of my just everyday baseline protocols. Dosing and delivery, lots of different ways to give CBD, one of which that I use an awful lot of are tinctures. So they're little bottles. They have dropper bottles. I'll use, my favorite is Boxley's. It is an organic CBD. We do have that in a couple of different bases. It comes in an MCT oil base. We also have it in olive oil base. So if you're allergic to nuts, then we typically are going to skew more towards the olive oil base, because MCT can have a derivation from coconuts. So the tinctures make it very easy with the dropper bottle to be able to titrate and work that dosage up. So typically, again, we'll start with 5 milligrams 3 times a day for about 5 days, and then go up to 10 milligrams. Just, again, keep going up until we hit the desired effect. Or if you experience daytime sleepiness, then that's a sign we need to back off the dose. If you're such at Baylor, I don't want to deal with the tincture, I don't want to deal with a liquid, gummies, they absolutely taste fantastic. It's a strawberry lemonade flavor, dynamite. And you can cut the things in half. Ideally, hold it, dissolve it underneath the tongue. Why? So like the advantage of the tincture, you get the sublingual absorption. So you let it dissolve underneath the tongue. You bypass what's called the first pass effect of the liver and bypass GI degradation. Soft gels, certainly another option. If it's rather, Baylor, I'd rather swallow a soft gel. Absolutely. We utilize nano emulsion, and that, again, working the dosage up as tolerated. Now, topicals, we've got a lot of different options available for topical, but as far as giving a systemic effect, no, topicals are more for, I've got a shoulder injury, I've got tennis elbow, that sort of thing. Is where we're going to pull the topicals, and topicals aren't going to get your systemic endocannabinoid system balance. That's where we're going to want to do something as an oral delivery. So now to tie into a little bit more, well, what are some pointed things that we can do to help with this inflammatory response? And active immune support is something that we put together that is absolutely geared towards it. So 2 capsules, which typically the dosage I'll do is 1 capsule 2 times a day for baseline. Okay, so more from a preventative standpoint. If you get it, contract it, have some respiratory issues, then we're going to crank that up to 4 to 6 capsules a day. So 2 capsules are going to provide you 600 milligrams of N-acetylcysteine. So N-acetylcysteine really is going to help increase glutathione. So it's going to help with that oxidative stress going on. NAC is also going to serve as an antimucolytic agent. So it's going to help with the lungs and that breathing. Quercetin is a mast cell stabilizer. We use that all the time for allergies and inflammation. EGCG as well, helping with antioxidant and oxidative stress, inflammation. The vitamin C in here is really used to help kind of drive these others and help with absorption. And then zinc, what's interesting is the EGCG and quercetin are also going to help drive the zinc into the cell, and we're going to talk about more of that in a minute. So for those that, Baylor, I'm doing some NAC separate, I'm doing quercetin separate, I'm doing EGCG separate, I'm doing zinc separate, 4 main active ingredients in one dosage form. And you can't say, well, Baylor, you left out the vitamin C in that. Yes, the vitamin C in here is really helping all of this other stuff with the absorption. So if you wanted to really kind of crank up that vitamin C and add that some extra, certainly you could. So the importance there of, well, what about zinc as that antioxidant? Zinc really is helping with that viral shedding, right? It's helping with that response. And there has been studies with the SARS virus, polio, influenza virus. It's going to help inhibit that NLRP3 inflammasome activation. So it's heading off at the reactive source, if you will, of that whole cascade of the inflammatory process. So that's why you've seen so much with zinc. Probably if you've tried to buy it in the last year, you've probably seen that it's been very difficult too, and that sourcing of it's not as readily available. Absolutely. People have realized that is going to help with prevention, and that's one reason why we've got it built into the active immune support. There again, how can we hit multiple dynamics of COVID without having so many bottles, if you will, on the counter? Certainly lots of data and studies on acute respiratory issues and distress. So again, reducing that duration as well. So if we can reduce that and help improving the recovery rate, that is a fantastic thing. Okay. And again, zinc, quercetin, and EGCG are going to help drive that zinc into the cell. So very synergistic formulation. EGCG, very bioactive polyphenol. It's derived from the green tea leaf. So in and upon itself, anti-inflammatory processes, antioxidant, anti-proliferative, antibacterial, as well as antiviral effects. So EGCG is a very powerful nutrient. Lots of data and studies have been done on EGCG. NAC, certainly, again, lots of data for chronic as well as acute bronchitis. So using 600 milligrams twice a day definitely significantly reduces those influenza episodes, and also length of and duration of infection. So that's why typically I say one twice a day. Sorry, I was doing pharmacy writing there. BID means twice a day in pharmacy world. 2 times a day for kind of baseline. Then if you get sick, increasing that to 1 to 2 caps, 2 to 3 times a day. And of course, depending on symptoms, if you're really bad, I'd hit it 2 capsules 3 times per day. The more severe things are, the harder hit it. So in summary, for active immune support, certainly zinc, absolutely imperative for viral immune defense. E.g., CG and quercetin are going to help get that zinc into the cell. Quercetin is going to also support immune health and endothelial health. NAC is hitting that lung health and reducing that bronchitis. And vitamin C is going to help recycle that glutathione produced by the body and help with that conversion from NAC. So again, lots of science and data on why that was put together the way it is. So what else can we do to help with that inflammation and inflammatory process? SPMs, so that's going to be helping to resolve that inflammatory process. So I wanted to share with you some data on this. So a normal kind of inflammatory process is you have inflammation, you have something going on in the body. So you have that body reaction, you have the process, and then you have the resolution, right? So the body is going to have that response to it. The body's going to the neutrophils or whatever, going to have the macrophages come up, gobble up, and then you have that resolving of the inflammatory process. So what happens, certainly when that continues and you have the inflammation come on and the immune system still firing, and you don't have that resolution, bam, it's staying way up here. So what we want to do is really hit that inflammatory process, help with the immune system's homeostasis so we can bring the inflammation down and resolve the whole inflammatory process. So that's where SPMs come in. And I'm not going to dive into all of this, but I wanted to really give you the appreciation for the science behind this. Is it is helping with that oxidative stress. It's helping with the NLRP3 activation of the inflammasome to squelch that inflammatory amplification and whole process going on. So it really kind of helps to bring in the macrophages and takes care of the neutrophils and with protection of cellular health at the same time. Okay. So whatever we can do to decrease that inflammatory reaction and helping with the immune system recover, very positive things, right? So in short, what that means is the SPMs are going to help prevent the excessive inflammation by breaking down the inflammasome activation chain reaction and promoting inflammation resolution without suppressing the immune system, right? We don't want to take it away from what our inherent body is trying to fight back. Okay. I wanted to have this on here just so people have an idea. When you watch the news, certainly, and I didn't bring in, if you want to see additional information on what you can do for COVID, we did have a webinar last month on COVID-19. So that goes more into other things utilized for COVID, what we can do for prevention, what we can do for diet, exercise, etc. Today, I wanted to focus more on the inflammatory process going on. But I did at least want to pull this in because this is interesting. You can't help but watch the news, and they talk about people with chronic disease, people with obesity are far more likely to have a harsher impact if they contract COVID. Well, what's a theory in part behind that? What's interesting is people with obesity have a lower ratio of SPMs inherently within their system. So they've got lower levels. So that there again, if we increase and give and replace the SPMs, that's going to help give the body's ability to be able to recover and fight this virus. and decrease the reactivity with the inflammasome and the inflammatory process. So I just find that kind of interesting on, in part why. And there again, another way to kind of word that, the more fat mass you carry, the more inflammation you're going to have within your system. Lots of literature. I'm not going to read through that. That certainly, you should have received a copy of the slides about 30 minutes prior to starting today. So if you didn't see that in your inbox, you may want to check your spam folder. Certainly, you can always reach out and let us know, and we can make sure you get a copy if that's gotten misplaced. So again, SPM actives, I use it for chronic pain. I use it for if you get sick, if you get injured, help you recover faster and get you out of crisis. So a compounded option, certainly being a compounded pharmacy, what are some other tools in our tool bag? Low-dose naltrexone. Low-dose naltrexone I use every day for folks, anybody with an autoimmune disease. Absolutely. Low-dose naltrexone. Anybody in chronic pain, low-dose naltrexone. So it's going to help with the inflammatory process. It's going to help with the immune system. So those are some things. So why pulling this in with discussion of COVID today? Well, look at how it's kind of working. You've already heard me kind of talk about neutrophils a little bit, heard me talk about macrophages, heard me mention mast cells, right? So it's helping on multiple dynamics of this with regards to the immune system. You may have heard of naltrexone. Naltrexone at high dose is used as an opioid antagonist, right? And it actually inhibits a variety of pathways. At low dose, it's an agonist versus antagonist. So it actually helps with stimulation of these pathways. So that's why we see immune support. That's why we see anti-inflammatory processes improve. So with that, what we see with LDN, increase in endogenous enkephalin and endorphin. So enhancement of the immune system. We see inhibition of the pro-inflammatory cytokines. Again, decreasing that inflammation. We see interaction with the opioid growth factor receptor, blockade of the opiate at the GI tract. So that's why we see such improvement in chronic inflammatory disease. It's absolutely been a game changer. Regulation of the T reception and production of interleukin 10 and TGF beta. So again, anytime I can use an agent, whether it's natural, whatnot, to hit a variety of different areas, that is an absolute win. As far as other things besides, so you have an appreciation, other areas besides COVID, lots of chronic disease. Pen takes it to the next page. Lots of chronic disease, right? So anybody with chronic disease, anybody with chronic inflammation does an amazing job. Typically, dose-wise, we start at 1.5 milligrams and titrate it up to 4.5, typically dosing at bedtime. And very often we'll have the practitioner is a compound, so compounds have to be prescribed, so we do need a prescription for that. So typically we do one prescription for anywhere from 60 to 90 capsules of the 1.5 milligrams. So that gives you the ability to titrate that up. So doing one capsule for 7 days and going to 2 capsules for 7 days and then 3 capsules. And then thereafter, we'll do a separate prescription for 30 caps of the 4.5 milligrams. Okay. Well tolerated. Generally, we just don't see problems with it, which is fantastic. So I did want to take just a moment when talking with COVID and with exposure. We do have a variety of different tests available. So we do have antibody testing available. We do have PCR testing. I did spend quite a bit of time researching which company to use on this, because so many of the different tests in the market space, probably about 50% effective. I think we all probably know somebody that has had a COVID test that came back negative. You're like, dang it, I would have sworn they lost taste, smell, everything else. So really how the lab is doing the test makes a huge difference. So whether we're looking at that PCR and that viral piece in the beginning phase, or whether we're looking at that IgM and IgG antibody response long term. So we can look at it both ways. Certainly looking at the more acute phase is going to be that swab, that nasal swab, right? We send that off. Generally, it's about a 36-hour turnaround time. Typically, we'll have patients do it on a Friday. We'll send it off FedEx Friday. I have the results in my inbox on Monday morning. So literally they're getting it, the lab's getting it on Saturday, running it on Sunday. We've got the results on Monday, which is pretty amazing. So, during the week, if we'd send it off on Tuesday, generally we're going to have the results back on Thursday. So it's pretty quick turnaround time. So that also works very well for folks right now with traveling that are having to show a negative. That's really quick turnaround, not having to deal with labs and everything like that. So it does have the FDA, EU thing. So again, IgG, IgM, that's going to be later. That's going to be 7 to 10 days post after infection where that's going to show up. So that's later. So typically we want to look at that later on. So if it's, well, gee, I wonder if I've been exposed. I want to know that for my own thought process. Again, that test is a blood spot test. So we'll prick the finger, put it on a card, send that off. There again, turnaround time on that as well is extremely fast at 36 hours. And I know we all have had nightmares of hearing people getting tested, and it takes a week or so to get it back. Again, this test is not covered by insurance. It is out of pocket. I'm trying to think off the top of my head what they are. I think the nasal swab one is maybe about $150, $160, and the IgG, IgM PCR test, it's definitely less than 200, but certainly Allison can give you, our patient care coordinator can give you exact testing on that, pricing on that. So very high on both of these, very high when we look at this, look at what it's testing. A lot of different spikes, a lot of different proteins within that. So a very high specificity, very high sensitivity, highest in the market space I've found. And it's testing 4 different antigens. Most tests out there are just testing one, either IgM or IgG, not both, and not testing all the different receptors. So for me, when I do something, I want it to be right. Again, this is giving you an idea on the blood spot piece. Okay. Again, compared to a lot of the other labs out there, a lot of the labs are just looking at IgG. They're looking at both, and they're also looking at that nucleus, really the DNA of the virus. So go back. Quick review, prevention piece. Everyday essentials. These are things that we should be taking every single day. Should be in our wheelhouse. Baylor, what should I do? I want to do something to help increase my chances of avoiding the virus. Active immune support would be my number 1 pick. 1 capsule twice a day. Could you add extra vitamin C to that? Absolutely. If you've got sleep cycle off, sleep issues, I'd consider melatonin. Melatonin has data helping to decrease the inflammasome reaction. If you've got some gut stuff going on, 70+% of the gut of the immune system surrounds the gut. So if the gut's not healthy, certainly that can impact the immune system. So that's why I kind of have that probiotic piece in there as kind of next step to add, these things. Secondary things we can add, there again, depending on your case, depending on what else you have going on, where your immune status is, certainly echinacea, beta-glucan, LR7 is a combination product that I use very frequently for allergies and seasonal allergies. So here, where we're starting to see a ray of sunshine at the end of winter and spring around the corner. So, for us here in Richmond, Virginia, being halfway between the mountains and the coast, we are a cesspool for allergies and pollen and mold, etc. So LR7 is a great non-drying out, non-stimulatory, non-depressant formulation. So it's not going to make you drowsy, not going to make you hyper. Very well tolerated. Depending on your history of GI stuff, so if you've got a lot of history of perhaps even IBS or Crohn's, etc., we could use a medical food called Ultra GI Replenish. Also, again, Reboost, that's another thing that I kind of keep in my arsenal. That is a homeopathic product. So if you're more inclined to, I'd rather stick with homeopathy, certainly we can go there as well. There again, I've got lots of tools and tips and tricks up our sleeve. Stress, I mentioned that because for so many folks, especially with COVID right now, stress has gone through the roof. So the adrenal glands are what's helping to process and handle the stress. Side note, yes, we do have a adrenal webinar we gave some time back. So if you'd like to listen to that, again, let us know. We can send you a link to that webinar as well to dive deeper into that. Cortisol Support is one of our herbal Ayurvedic adaptogenic formulas. So if the adrenals are kind of overproducing, it helps bring it down. If they're underproducing, kind of helps modulate and bring it up. Works very well, typically well tolerated, 1 capsule twice a day. L-theanine does an amazing job for balancing the neurotransmitters in general, really hits that norepi and epi balance. So kind of feeling overwhelmed. So you got a lot of weight on the shoulders and it's kind of what it does, right? Which can also help with the focus on the task at hand. So L-theanine, very safe, non-addictive, non-drowsy, non-goofy, non-loopy. That you could do 1 capsule up to 4 times a day. We do have that in different strengths for adults. Typically, I'm going to go for the 200 milligram strength. For kids, we'll use 100 milligrams, but very safe. I'll use it for kids as low as 3 years old. I use it for puppy dogs and kitty cats too. So this kind of more geared towards prevention. The next page, what happens if I get sick, Baylor? What do I do? So what you'll notice is, this has a lot same stuff here, but you'll notice dosing goes heavier, right? So prevention standpoint, 1 twice a day. You get sick, slam it, crush it. Let's increase that up 2-3 times a day, right? Adding those SPMs on board, 1 to 6 a day. Well, how many do I do? Depending how severe you are, depending what family history you have, depending what personal history. Do you have a lot of comorbid disease states? Are you overweight? How overweight are you, right? That's depending how hard. Some people like to start low on that and increase it up. Typically with the SPMs, I'm under the mindset, let's hit it hard, let's get it under control, let's resolve it, and then back off. So I tend to hit SPMs harder out of the box and then back off as you improve, then start low and build up. Especially with the COVID virus, it can be a booger and it can hit hard and fast. So I tend to, let's not mess around and put the hammer down. Again, all these other supplements I just mentioned, and you'll notice they're again on dosing on these a little bit more aggressive as well. And depending what's going on, for instance, ViraClear is a great herbal homeopathic formulation that if you're having a lot of respiratory issues, it does an amazing job. Amazing job. English ivy syrup, if you've got any coughing or wheezing, It's a non-drowsy formula, well tolerated. It's in two ways. It's as a syrup and it's also as a tincture. So the tincture is in an alcohol base. So if we need to avoid alcohol, we want to do syrup. If you'd rather avoid the syrup, do the alcohol base, then we can do that. So two ways on that. Again, all the way down to echinacea, extra immune, extra inflammation with curcumin and turmeric, etc. Of course, don't forget your PPE. Keep your mask on. We had somebody come in yesterday without a mask. Are you serious? This is not a political thing, folks. It does help prevent spread. Protect yourself, protect others. If you don't care about yourself, at least care about somebody else. We have a lot of very sick patients. We have a lot of autoimmune patients we deal with. So I have a very strict policy. You are not allowed in the store without a mask, period. I don't care if you have a note from your doctor. You're not going to be allowed in. We will do curbside. It's easy for free shipping. We can get on FaceTime with you, right? Let's do FaceTime. If you're, well, I want to shop the store. Fine. I'll have a staff walk through the store with you on FaceTime and you can shop from your car. I refuse to expose my staff and their families and our other patients. Let's be smart. So we've gone over a lot of information really pretty quick today, and I was trying to keep today's kind of shorter. We're trying to gravitate towards, for some of our webinars, more of a podcast type style is where we're kind of heading. So I'm trying to kind of pull out, instead of hitting broader topics, kind of some more narrowed, faster aspects for you. So what do I do? How do I get started? Right? Give us a call, stop in. We can help you. As I just said, I mean, we can be your personal shopper if needed to. If you'd rather shop from the comfort of your own home on the computer, absolutely. You can visit our online store. We are adding to that every single day. Most all of the products are in our online store. I do realize we don't have every picture to everything in the online store. We are adding more descriptions and adding pictures every single day. And certainly you can follow us on a whole variety of different social media channels. We just have a new employee on board. Eric is with us and very excited. So he's really going to be pumping those things up. So we are going to be running different specials and different promotions, if you will, on the different channels, you know, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter, in addition to Facebook. So that hopefully gives you a little bit of incentive to follow us across the different platforms versus just being focused on one. And then, of course, our email newsletter. We try to keep that very informative, and I promise I never have, nor will I ever sell your information. So we want to keep everything a safe place for you. So questions, don't forget the chat box is there. Go ahead and type in your questions if you have any questions, if there's anything that we haven't discussed that is burning with you this afternoon. And while we're waiting for those to come in, certainly if you have chronic disease, if you have a very complex disease state, and it's, you know, Baylor, I've got a bunch of different meds I'm on and I want to be cautious with what we do and how we add things, absolutely give us a call. Pop Allison an email. Her email is patientcare@southriverrx.com, and she can get you set up for a consultation. There is a fee for consultations, and we do have a couple of different providers that can do that, whether you see me or whether you see Rhonda. So again, kind of depending where your case is, we'll kind of set you up with the right person. And also, as a reminder for those that missed today, we will be sending out a link to this webinar. And those that are on here, certainly if you want to rewatch it, if there's something that you missed and, oh, I was taking a note and I missed that, we will send you a link out so you can rewatch it. Generally, we'll get those out to you within about 24 hours. It does take it a while to record with all the audio and video. All right, folks, I'm not seeing any questions come in this afternoon. So certainly if anything else does come up, again, you know where to reach us. Stop in, give us a call, send us an email and we'll be glad to help you answer any questions you may have. So with that, I wish everybody a healthy, happy day. Get outside and enjoy some sunshine. For us here in Richmond, the sun's been out 2 days in a row after rain, and ice. So certainly a welcome change. So thank you for your attention, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks. Have a great day, everyone.